flood your social media feeds moments after they happen.
Batman!
From fights between students at school, on the court, assaults on teachers, beatdowns at the bus stops, all of it caught on camera.
People call it clout, like they get the video.
It's personally sad to me that kids think it's better to stand and record a fight than to help end a fight. But that's like not a public education problem. That's like a societal problem that we see in microform in the schools.
Valerie Gilson has taught in classrooms for the last 8 years, from California to Kentucky.
Make sure that you're looking at the expectations chart that I posted.
She says videos like these put the public education system in a negative light, but are not representative of the entire student body.
These videos are becoming far too common in our public schools, and it's becoming somewhat of the norm, unfortunately. I'm Kendall Qualls, and this is Fully Charged. Sheila's not with me today. She's working on a special assignment that you'll hear more about later in our segment. Former educator Simon Whitehead was a teacher in the Minneapolis public school system for 25 years. He resigned in 2017. He joins us to talk about the bureaucratic chaos in Minneapolis public schools and the fallout for students and teachers. Thank you for joining me, Simon. Glad you're here with me. So Simon, give us an idea of your background, which schools you were at, and what caused you to have this conversation with us today.
Well, thank you, Kendall. I was a teacher for 37 years.
Okay.
25 years, which the last 25 years at Southwest High School in Minneapolis.
Okay.
And I think out of those 37 years, 35 years were just absolutely fantastic. Mm-hmm. But apparently, the last 2 years, I was a terrible teacher.
That's their narrative.
That's their narrative, yeah, yes. Yeah. So it was a wonderful school, Southwest High School, wonderful school. It was an IB school. In 2012, it was the top high school in Minnesota, according to U.S. News.
Okay.
Today, it's not even in the top 50. It's the Minneapolis public schools have systematically destroyed that school.
Okay. Well, what we're going to talk about a bit here is, number one, academic excellence should be our main priority for all our schools, right? Talk to us about the change in discipline that happened probably about 5, 6, 7 years ago that has caused the prevailing narrative that we see today in our schools, where kids that are having discipline problems, provoking many fights, are not being held responsible and expelled from schools.
Well, I think it all started with the Dear Colleague letter from President Obama in 2015,
okay,
which basically told school districts that kids of color were being suspended at a higher rate than other students, and that was to stop.
Okay.
And so the administrators and the district sent out an edict to the schools that you can't suspend kids of color unless they do something extremely violent.
Right.
You know? And so that tied the administrators and the teachers' hands a lot because kids became unsuspendable. The kids are smart, they realized that. Mm-hmm. They realized what was going on. So basically the kind of a very small minority of the kids took over the school. And it was a pity because, 90% of the kids, they just want to go to school and learn.
Right.
And they were really prevented from doing that because of a very small minority of kids who were continually being disruptive. The loss of instruction time was immense, Kendall.
Right.
Because of continually dealing with students who are disruptive.
So let me interject here. I think one of the biggest issues that we have, again, this is in the Black community, it is pervasive. We have a crisis of fatherless homes in our communities. What's happening is that we don't have an issue of school administrators or school discriminating against Black kids or brown kids. We have an issue with fatherless home kids with lack of discipline from home, not being held to any standard of behavior, and now acting that out in our schools and with no repercussions. Little to no repercussions at all, and we're seeing it pervasively, not just here in Minnesota, but across our country. The first knee-jerk reaction from administrators when these type of things happen is to hide the information, make sure that parents and public doesn't know about it. We have evidence of that. Second is that these kids know that they're not going to be held accountable, so they're a ticking time bomb in our schools, to both students and to teachers. And Simon, share with us some of the things that you've experienced personally, and the change. I mean, you have enough experience in the schools to know what it was like before and see what it's like now. So share with us a little bit about that.
Well, just a simple example. And the hypocrisy of Minneapolis is staggering. They would want high standards. They would want kids to be on time. They would want homework to be in, but they wouldn't support the teachers in that. So if you saw a student in the classroom, in the hallways, when they shouldn't be, if you politely asked them to go to class, they would tell you to F off. Then the administrator would be involved, and they would say, well, let's see what let's hear the student and see what he says. I said, no, that's not the story. He told me to F off. Well, what did you say to make him do that? I said, I asked him to go to class, So before, the administrator straight away, acknowledged the fact that there was a problem and deal with it. Now, there was like questioning of the teachers' ethics, and it was the teacher's fault that student wasn't in class and was disrespectful to the teacher. That's just a simple example of the kind of things that were going on.
Is that the new training they were bringing?
The new training is teachers were racist, black students were victims.
Okay.
And that was very pervasive within with all the training that we had on white privilege and all this kind of stuff. So that was extremely pervasive. So another example, a white student would come in late and you would deal with it with a consequence. A black student would come in late and then you're a racist for dealing with it. Well, so
let me ask you something.
Those things actually happened to me.
Yes. Okay, good. That's good to know. Those things have actually happened. We've been told, it's public, that critical race theory and the training on critical race theory was not happening in schools. And while they were saying it wasn't happening, you're being trained on this new philosophy. What was the scenario? Not only were you trained, what were you told to say or not to say about the training?
Well, it wasn't overt. It was more subversive, In the old days, if a kid swore at a teacher, it would be, you go home for a day, you come back with the parent, you discuss it, the kid goes on a contract for 2 weeks where the parent and the teacher have to sign off on it, and it worked very well.
A lot of schools are not dealing with lawlessness, but they're dealing with habitual problem makers.
Yep.
That causes, to your point, disruptive learning, not only for teachers, but also for the remaining students.
Right.
What's happening to the profession? Are teachers, leaving in droves? Are they making course corrections? Help me understand what's happening to the profession itself.
Well, the first thing I'd say is that we've lost a tremendous amount of very talented teachers. We've got some amazing teachers in Minneapolis public schools, some very caring, dedicated teachers and students, but we're losing a lot of them. We're losing a lot of them because they just can't hack what's going on right now. I'm one of them.
And so teachers are leaving the profession. They're not getting recruited. What
students are leaving,
and students are leaving. We're seeing a huge, increase in parents taking kids out. Do you understand some of the motivation behind it? Have you gotten word around what's been the driving motivation behind that?
I see teachers that teach there now, and my first question is it getting any better? And they say no, it's getting worse. Okay. Southwest High School, as the example, they've had 4 principals in 5 years. That's not going to be good for the student population or the school itself.
So we're seeing in some cases, Hopkins, for example, with open enrollment, a lot of parents are moving their kids into the Minnetonka School District. A lot of parents are moving their kids to private schools, homeschooling. What's been the driver behind the exodus?
I think the lack of discipline. It's no coincidence that some of the charter schools that we have in Minneapolis are doing very well. Those kids wear school uniform. There is discipline in those schools. And those kids, no matter what color they are, they're doing very well because of the structure.
Well, there's something that's going wrong. We have, across our state, again, declining academic performance across all races. Okay, not just in the black community. It's unfortunate. We need to make academic excellence a priority. The marketplace is becoming more competitive, nationally and internationally.
Yep.
And our kids need to be prepared. And obviously, we're spending a lot of time in places and a lot of budget in areas that don't have anything to do much with academic performance. So I saw this one graph, and this was published at the Center for American Experiment, that there was like a 7% increase in student enrollment in Minnesota. And then there was like an 8% increase in teacher enrollment, but an 89% increase in administrators. Where's that increase coming from? Is this the diversity, equity, and inclusion counselors? I mean, where is that increase coming from? That's significant.
It is. There's a place called the Davis Center, which is the place where Minneapolis kind of is their headquarters.
Okay.
It's filled with people who don't teach and who think of new things for teachers to do.
That's a significant increase. I mean, we think about the budget increases that the unions have asked for, the Department of Education has asked for. They've gotten the increases, but what I've seen in the actual data, very little of that goes to teachers.
All right.
And a lot of it is going to administrators.
Yep.
And we have a graph that shows for the first time in American history, I think it goes back, the intersection crossed, I believe, in 2018, where in this country today, we have more administrators than teachers ever for the first time in American history in our public school systems. That's an issue. That's a problem. What I find so fascinating, it's amazing what we accomplished as a country when all we had was a chalkboard, the classics of education, the basics of math and science, and we didn't have these things like monitors and iPads, and we accomplished so much as a nation. And today we're struggling, and we have all the advances of science, cell phones, and iPads, and everything else, computers in the classroom. So, you've been in the classroom for a long time, so you've seen the transition. Help me understand on a typical day. I've heard reports. I don't want to, lead you with my answer. Help me understand the number of incidences, of disciplinary incidences that happen in a classroom in a typical day versus what it used to be, so literally 10, 15 years ago.
Well, I think the first thing is there's a lot of kids late to class. And that gets the students off on a bad foot with the teacher because they've got to reteach the first 5 minutes of class.
So is that the norm?
It's normal. It's normal that a bunch of kids come in late for class.
Okay.
And the EAs and the security, they're trying to get the kids to class, but the kids won't listen.
Okay.
So you've got kids coming late to class. The phones. The phones are out and the kids are on their phones in class. There are some teachers who battle this and they have places for the kids, but the phones are definitely a problem.
Okay.
The disrespect to the teachers is now a daily thing. Teachers are getting sworn at on a daily basis. What other profession do you walk into your job and get sworn at every day? Mm-hmm. It's pretty hard to take sometimes.
No, you're absolutely right.
And then that has progressed to pushing and shoving and physical abuse of teachers sometimes, because they know that they're not going to be held accountable. It's going to be swept under the table. I know teachers that have been assaulted and they just transferred the teacher out of the school because it was going to be less issues for the district to deal with.
So I have to believe that there are younger teachers coming into the profession mid-career. They may have high standards. So are they just being told to be compliant and don't say anything and don't do anything? Is that the difference?
A lot of teachers are suffering in silence because
Okay.
if they say anything, they're going to lose their job or they're going to become a target themselves.
Okay.
So there's a lot of bad behavior going on in classrooms that is going completely unpunished. It's unaccountable.
Well, the concern for me, and I would, as a parent and a grandparent in these schools, is that there's a safety problem that the public is not being made aware of.
Sure.
And that's a liability issue. It really is. Well, because if administrators know and teachers know, the kids all know it. I mean, they have the cell phones, as you mentioned, and they're recording all this stuff. It's happening routinely.
Oh, yeah. So you may have heard the phrase of a school to prison pipeline. Well, I can tell you there's also a prison to school pipeline where kids who have been incarcerated are being placed back into classrooms in your kid's class. Their teacher doesn't know about it, and all of a sudden there's an explosion of violence in that classroom at some point because that kid has been incarcerated. What are they going to learn in a prison setting is how to protect themselves and so forth. So that's caused a problem in the past with teachers not knowing that this is a violent student.
And so what age range we're talking about?
High school, usually.
High school level?
I would say high school, yeah.
Okay.
Late middle school. I mean, my experience is high school, but that's happened on many occasions, I can tell you. And then there's administrative transfers where instead of suspending or expelling a student, they just switch that kid to another school where they continue the same behavior. And the teacher doesn't know they've got a violent student in their class.
Does the administration know?
The administration knows.
Well, let me ask you on another note, why aren't any of these incidents being reported to police?
It's inconvenience.
What's the? Is there a policy of not reporting it?
Oh yeah, nothing like that gets reported to the police. The last year I was at the high school at Southwest, they took away the resource officer because they thought having someone in uniform was disrespectful and hurtful to the African American students. So they took away the resource officer.
That's terrible. The purpose of Take Charge is to help in our Black community take charge of our lives, take charge of our communities, take charge of our families. And in our communities, we need leaders to join us, step forward, because we as a Black community didn't used to live like this. Our kids didn't behave like this. Did we have kids that acted out? We obviously, yes, we did. But it wasn't the norm. It didn't define our culture, and right now it is. And I'm asking for leaders in the community to join me because we need to fix this fatherless home issue. We should not be expecting that it's the norm that our kids come from fatherless homes and we say nothing about it. We don't have a pipeline to prison problem in our schools. We have a pipeline to prison problems in our homes. The discipline starts at homes. And the first place a child should be disciplined is not when they get to schools from a teacher or a police officer. That first discipline, whether you raise the kids with 2 parents or 1, should be happening in our homes. So we're looking for people to join, to be part of what we're doing, to be a solutions-oriented. We're not looking to point fingers. We're looking to solve problems. And we're seeing the toxicity of our behaviors in our communities, not only happen in our own communities, but it's happening in our neighbors, in our schools, and we need to address it. We don't need a law to pass it. This is not a political issue. It's not a racial issue. It's a behavioral standard issue, and I'm asking you to join me. Thank you.
I will say that there are a group of teachers, I'm one of them, part of the Safe Schools group,
yes,
which are trying to get the word out. We went to DC in 2018 and talked to the administration there. We are trying to let the public know what's going on in our schools.
Yes.
And so I appreciate that you having me on here and as part of that Safe Schools project to see if we can, at least get the word out.
Well, appreciate you joining us, Simon. I feel really bad for teachers. A lot of teachers get in this profession because they want to help. They love teaching. They love young people, and see them nurture and grow and all that. And boy, what's happening right now, the forces are against that desire to do that one thing that they love to do.
Absolutely.
It's become so political. It's becoming so bureaucratic that we're getting in the way of the simple nature of just helping to raise and nurture kids.
People need to know, because right now the kids are losing.
Yes.
Everyone in Minneapolis schools is losing.
What's so tragic about this, I'm a product from a public school, and I can tell you, and they weren't the great public schools, inner city Harlem, and then later in Oklahoma in a trailer park. If I can get a basic education from that, a lot of these kids can get a basic education and have a very different life. But if that's being impeded by the discipline problems, by the bureaucratic administration, then we're going to be worse for wears. And we're much better as a country, as a people, than the people that are serving us right now. And we need to bring this to a new awakening, if you will. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks for watching Fully Charged. We've created this podcast to counter the prevailing narrative and to give you the other side of the story that you never hear. If you like this podcast and believe what we're doing, please consider subscribing. And most of all, share this podcast with friends and family. To find out more about our work, go to our website at takechargemn.com and consider supporting us. Your support helps us spread the message. We'll be back next week with more of the perspective you never hear.